Picture this. Africa, the richest continent in natural resources, becomes the richest continent in the world. Sounds like a dream, right? Well, it's not as far-fetched as it seems. For centuries, Africa has been the backbone of global economies, exporting gold, oil, cocoa, and countless other resources. Yet paradoxically, many African nations remain underdeveloped and economically dependent. But what if I told you that just one fundamental shift could change everything, making Africa not just independent but wealthier than Europe? Stick around, because we're diving deep into the past, present and future to uncover the truth. And trust me, you don't want to miss this. Let's roll back the clock to before colonization. Africa wasn't just surviving, it was thriving. The continent was home to mighty kingdoms and empires like Mali, Songhai, Great Zimbabwe and Benin. These were societies of innovation, trade and immense wealth. The Mali Empire under Mansa Musa was so wealthy that his legendary pilgrimage to Mecca in the 14th century disrupted economies across North Africa and the Middle East. The Kingdom of Great Zimbabwe built impressive stone structures and controlled trade routes that linked the African interior to the Indian Ocean. The Benin Kingdom was a hub for art, culture and commerce, with a sophisticated economy driven by trade in textiles, metals and spices. Africans were not only resourceful but deeply connected through local trade networks. Wealth was shared among communities and innovation flourished. Then came the European colonists and everything changed. Colonization wasn't just about occupying land, it was about restructuring economies to serve European interests. Africa's resources were no longer for Africans. Railways, ports and roads were built, but not for internal development. Instead, they were designed to funnel Africa's wealth outward. Colonists established a system where African nations exported raw materials like cocoa, diamonds, oil and coffee, while importing finished goods from Europe. This system wasn't accidental, it was strategic. The aim was to make Africa dependent while enriching Europe. And here's the kicker. Even after independence, this export-import model didn't go away. Fast forward to today, and Africa is still trapped in this vicious cycle. Countries like Nigeria export crude oil, only to import refined petroleum at a much higher cost. Ghana ships out cocoa beans, but imports chocolate. This system siphons wealth out of Africa and leaves little room for economic growth. The numbers don't lie. Africa is responsible for 30% of the world's mineral reserves and 12% of oil production, yet many of its citizens live below the poverty line. The continent exports billions worth of raw materials annually, but imports even more in finished goods. This imbalance keeps African economies weak, dependent, and unable to compete globally. Why is exporting raw materials such a bad deal? Let's break it down. First, lost value. Raw materials are worth far less than finished goods. For example, cocoa beans are cheap, but chocolate is a multi-billion-dollar industry. Second, job loss. Exporting raw materials means exporting jobs. Processing resources locally creates industries and employment opportunities. Third, economic dependency. By relying on foreign countries to process raw materials, Africa becomes vulnerable to global market fluctuations. If Africa wants to break free, it needs to keep the value of its resources at home. So, what's the game changer? It's simple: process raw materials locally and trade within Africa. This shift could revolutionize Africa's economy. Enter the African Continental Free Trade Area, or AfCFTA. This agreement aims to create a unified market for African goods and services, eliminating trade barriers between nations. Imagine Ghana selling chocolate to Nigeria or Ethiopia trading textiles with Kenya. The potential is limitless. Some countries are already taking bold steps. Ivory Coast is increasing local cocoa processing, boosting its chocolate exports, and keeping more revenue within its borders. South Africa is expanding its manufacturing sector to add value to its mineral wealth. Ethiopia is emerging as a textile powerhouse, producing finished garments instead of exporting raw cotton. These success stories show that change is not only possible, but already happening. To make this vision a reality, Africa needs a solid game plan. Here's what it takes. First, infrastructure development. Invest in roads, railways and ports to connect African markets. Second, policy reforms. Create trade-friendly regulations and harmonize tariffs across countries. Third, capacity building. Develop a skilled workforce through education and vocational training. Fourth, modern agricultural practices. Use technology to boost productivity and reduce reliance on imports. Fifth, leveraging the AFCFTA. Fully implement this agreement to encourage the free movement of goods and services. And finally, industrial development. Focus on building factories and industries to process raw materials locally. What does Africa stand to gain? Let's paint the picture one. Stronger economies. Countries retain and reinvest wealth locally. 2. Job creation. Processing resources at home creates millions of jobs. 3. Global influence. A united Africa becomes a major player in the global economy. 4. Better living standard. More wealth means improved healthcare, education and infrastructure. 5. Sustainability. Local industries can adopt eco-friendly practices to protect Africa's environment. Africa has everything it needs to be a global powerhouse: resources, talent and a growing market. The only thing missing is the right strategy. By shifting from exporting raw materials to processing them locally and trading within the continent, Africa can rewrite its economic story. Imagine an Africa where wealth stays home, economies thrive, and its people prosper. That's not just a dream, it's a possibility within reach. So, what are your thoughts? Let us know in the comments below. And if you found this video insightful, don't forget to like, share and subscribe for more content about Africa's journey to greatness. Together, we can spark the change that this continent deserves.